Welcome to Within the Frame, where we bring the most pressing issues across the globe into focus. I'm Kim Mok-yeon. President Trump's first congressional address of his second term set the tone for his administration's priorities in 2025, touching on trade, foreign policy, and national security. His speech sparked immediate reactions, with some praising his firm stance on economic nationalism, while others criticized it as more political posturing than policymaking. From his push to repeal the CHIPS Act to his remarks on South Korea's trade policies and his renewed focus on tariffs, Trump's agenda signals a shift toward a more protectionist and transactional approach. To break down Trump's latest speech and its broader implications, we invite Min Jeong-hun, professor at the Korean National Diplomatic Academy, in the studio with us. Welcome, Professor.
Yeah, my pleasure.
And we also connect to our Voice of America correspondent, Chris Casquejo from Washington, D.C. Great to have you with us again, Chris.
Good to be with you.
So, Chris, like you said, President Trump's first congressional address of his second term concluded in a matter of hours ago. Could you tell us what were the key themes of his speech and how do they reflect his administration's broader strategy moving forward?
Right. Trump spoke for an hour and 39 minutes, and that was the longest speech from a president to a joint session of Congress ever. He said his administration has accomplished more in 43 days than most administrations accomplished in 4 or 8 years. Today, Trump has signed nearly 80 executive orders, several of which are being challenged in court. Now, immigration was a main theme early in his speech. Trump touted his declaration of a national emergency at the U.S.-Mexico border and the deployment of the U.S. military and Border Patrol to repel the invasion of our country, in his words. He said his administration has launched the most sweeping border and immigration crackdown in American history. He also defended his sweeping reductions to the size of the federal bureaucracy, led by the richest man in the world, Elon Musk, whose Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, has been behind the layoffs of tens of thousands of government workers and their cuts throughout the federal government. But the message from Trump was clear that he's going to continue to do things his way. He sparred with the Democrats that were in attendance on occasion, and he also, he relished some of those confrontations that were happening in the gallery. And overall, his strategy seems to be, stop me. If you don't like what I'm doing, try to stop me, whether it's the courts, whether it's Congress. And there's not much that Democrats can do because they are the minority party right now. And it doesn't seem that the GOP lawmakers have any sort of will to stop some of his more unpopular moves, like the DOGE effort that is led by Elon Musk.
Right. So a large portion of his speech seems to be like a continuation of his first-term policies, but with an even sharper focus on economic nationalism. Now, what about Professor Min? What was your biggest takeaway from President Trump's speech?
Yes, and basically I agree with Chris about the main features of his first congressional speech and his second government. And for me, I got two things that took my attention during the speech earlier today: confidence and readiness. I think that President Trump seemed very confident about what his government is doing nowadays. He mentioned about the main policy agendas of his current government and the energy, southern border government reform, tariffs, Russia-Ukraine war, the Middle East, and so on. And he was very the confidence about what his government is doing and what the agendas that his government is focused on with the high confidence. And he also emphasized that his government is doing its job very fast, which means that his government has been prepared very well to run the country, specifically compared to the 2016, where his government got a little readiness in terms of running the government. And I remember that at the time it took several months before he got the confirmation from the Senate for the major cabinet cabinet the positions. So he could initiate his main policy agenda sometime summer in 2017, so very slower than what is happening this year, 2025. So it means that the second Trump government is very well prepared in terms of the personnel and their policy agendas and other things. So I expect that, like the Chris mentioned, there would be nothing standing in the Trump path. So the Trump second government continues to be very aggressive to make progress for its main policy agendas in the coming months, like they're making good achievements for the first 100 days plan.
Right, so definitely he gained confidence compared to his first term. Now, we also hear several Democratic lawmakers boycotted the speech, calling it a MAGA rally rather than a policy address. Chris, could you remind us how deep is the current political divide in Washington, and how could this affect the administration's ability to push with Trump's policies through the Congress?
The partisan divide in the U.S. was really on display for the world to see last night with this speech. You know, there were moments where Republicans were standing and Democrats were sitting silently. And, you know, the president seemed to relish that. And just a few minutes into his address, he was interrupted by jeering from the House floor, prompting House Speaker Mike Johnson to direct the Sergeant at Arms to remove Democratic Representative Al Green of Texas after he shouted, "You don't have a mandate" at Trump. Trump continued his address after Green was removed from the chamber. Now, some Democratic lawmakers actually walked out in the middle of his address. Some chose entirely not to attend it. In the Democratic response to Trump's address, first-term Michigan Senator Elissa Slotkin called for voters to get more involved with politics. "It's easy to be exhausted," she said, "but America needs you now more than ever. If previous generations had not fought for this democracy, where would we be today?" she asked. Now, the business of lawmaking is going to be one of those things that we're watching as a March 14th deadline looms to avoid a partial government shutdown in D.C. Democrats have vowed to fight proposed deep cuts to Medicare and Medicaid, which are government-funded health insurance for the elderly and poor, including in the GOP's budget legislation. And the GOP only has a one-vote cushion in the House. So, you know, a lot of times these budgets haven't passed without some Democrats crossing over to the other side, or Republicans crossing over when Democrats are in control. So it's going to be interesting to watch in whether they do shut down the government, which, you know, happened under President Trump in his first term. But there's a lot of political fallout that happens when the government is shut down because many services are disrupted. You know, people who visit government offices or, you know, some of the museums in DC aren't able to visit them because, you know, the government shut down. So it's very disruptive. And I don't think either of the parties wants to get to that point. That's why we always get to these last minute deadlines and they end up passing a resolution, a continuing resolution to keep the government funded. So we're going to have to see if that happens, you know, in the next 9 days when this March 14th deadline hits us.
Right, so it definitely is a very situation that's a very polarized situation. But we'll really have to see how it flows. Now, one of the biggest anticipated topics during Trump's speech was his stance on Ukraine, of course, especially because the speech came right after the mineral agreement collapsed. Chris, how is the American public viewing the latest breakdown?
Right. So a CBS News YouGov poll conducted over 3 days beginning late last month found that a relatively slim majority, 52% of Americans, said they personally support Ukraine. But it's important to note that this poll was taken before last Friday's diplomatic breakdown in the Oval Office that ended in that shouting match among President Trump, Vice President J.D. Vance, and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, and also before the U.S. decided earlier this week to temporarily pause military aid to Ukraine. Now, in his address, Trump said he received a letter on Tuesday from Ukrainian President Zelensky that said Kyiv is ready to come to the negotiating table as soon as possible. And Trump said, I appreciate that he sent the letter in his speech. And continuing on the war in Ukraine, Trump said, it's time to stop this madness. It's time to halt the killing. It's time to end this senseless war. So he's definitely resolute in his vow to end this war. In fact, during the campaign, he made the promise to end it on day one. And here we are a couple of months into his term, and it's still raging on. So, he's eager to get this done, negotiating separately with Russia, separately with Ukraine, and then bringing the countries to the table ostensibly to get this war that has been going on for 4 years over.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for the clear summary of the president's remarks. Now, with this, Professor Min, like Chris said, Trump has suggested revisiting the Ukraine-U.S. mineral deal, and he also criticized past government's military aid efforts, and he also mentioned relevant measures would be taken in the latter of this week. What kind of signals does this send about the future of U.S. support to Ukraine?
Well, basically, I think that Russia and Ukraine war will find its exit following what President Trump wants. That there will be little exception about the Ukraine if Ukraine could get some kind of advantages or some modification of the deal between the Ukraine and the United States, because there is a clear imbalance of power between the two countries. And the U.S. has been clear that U.S. does not want to give more military aid or some kind of economic aid to Ukraine if Ukraine does not follow what U.S. wants. And we saw some kind of the opinion, the difference in opinion between the two leaders when they got the summit meeting in the White House a few days ago. But I think that the Ukrainian President Zelensky made the big mistakes in terms of the securing its national interest. Of course, I can understand that he wanted to show some kind of strong posture or the position against what the U.S. forced to follow the Ukraine. But think about the situation that his country faces. Without U.S. support, there would be nothing that Ukraine could do, even if the European allies would help for Ukraine, but it would not be enough. That Zelensky knows about it, but still he resisted, and some kind of the disputes or the opinion differences between the two leaders. And after that kind of the event, and earlier today or the last night at the Washington Times, Trump mentioned during the speech that he got a beautiful letter from Zelensky that the Ukraine would want make a deal, the mineral deal with the United States. Think about the situation where the President Trump got mad at what Zelensky did during the summit meeting, and it shows that there would be a little change in terms of U.S. postures or the opinions about how to make the mineral deal with the Ukraine. So only change that could be possible is that Ukraine could get some more disadvantages in terms of making a deal. So there's nothing to lose for the U.S. In terms of the mineral deal. So I think that the President Trump would enjoy the situation for some time, and he will also bring the Zelensky to the White House or somewhere in the United States to finish the deal. And he also mentioned during the speech that President Putin is also ready for the peace during the speech last night. So I think that President Trump is confident in terms of making progress, in terms of ending the war. And I think he thinks that he is confident in terms of making some kind of the negotiations with both of the countries. So I think that the exit of the war would be accomplished just to follow totally follow almost following what U.S. wants.
Right, so we are nearing the end of the Ukraine war, but we'll have to see how the agreements will go. Now, shifting gears, Tuesday has marked the start of Trump's new tariff measures, 25% on Canadian and Mexican products and an additional 10% on Chinese goods, along with forthcoming agricultural tariffs. Chris, how are businesses and policymakers responding to this?
Well, stocks racked up more losses on Wall Street Tuesday, which wiped out all of the gains since Election Day for the Standard & Poor 500. The markets are having a tough time even setting expectations for what this trade war could look like, according to Ross Mayfield, who's an investment strategy analyst at Baird. And the tariffs are prompting warnings from retailers, some of the larger retailers in the U.S., including Target and Best Buy, as they report their latest quarterly financial results. Best Buy's CEO says China and Mexico are the top two sources for products that Best Buy sells, and it also expects vendors to pass along tariff costs, which would make price increases for American consumers more likely. Now, it's important to note that in the last day or so, before these tariffs went into effect, U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick says that it is possible that a deal could be reached with Mexico and Canada on these tariffs to either decrease them or pause them entirely, if they reach terms that are agreeable to the U.S. And it's Trump's contention that Canada and Mexico have not done enough to stop the flow of illegal fentanyl into the U.S. across its borders, and that they're also not doing enough, especially Mexico, to stop the flow of migrants into the U.S. across the southern border. So again, many observers believe that Trump uses tariffs as a way to negotiate better deals with other countries, on a wide variety of things. But, we'll see if they actually go into effect or if Canada and Mexico are able to cut a deal to get out of these tariffs.
Mm-hmm. Now, President Trump has also declared his intention to repeal the CHIPS Act. He called it a terrible law. So given that this act was crucial in securing semiconductor investments in the U.S., how do you think it would be how would it affect economic and industrial consequences? What kind of consequences would it bring?
Well, if the CHIPS Act would be repealed, it would make a very big impact or the negative impact to the companies with the high-tech industries like semiconductor industries or the companies. And as you mentioned during the speech, President Trump mentioned that he wanted to repeal the CHIPS Act, and he also emphasized that tariffs, not subsidies, will bring investments and the manufacturing facilities back to the United States. And he took the example of the TSMC in terms of making a huge amount of money to the American soil, Arizona. And but still, it's not clear that if President Trump actually orders to repeal the act, but it seems that it would be inevitable for companies to receive some disadvantages because of their uncertainties of getting the subsidies that the previous Biden administrations promised. Actually, the many companies like Samsung and SK, they trusted what the Biden administration mentioned about subsidies, and they actually made the huge investments to build the factories, the facilities to the American soil. And without the subsidies, they would not secure enough the competitiveness in the price of their products, and that they could get in trouble in terms of making their business or maintaining their business in the United States. So I hope that there will be some kind of the compromise or negotiations to find the acceptable the exit for the companies and the businesses.
Right. Now, Professor Min, Trump has also pinpointed South Korea during his speech. He mentioned about the U.S. supporting South Korea's defense. And he also said South Korea imposes tariffs 4 times higher than those imposed by the U.S. Could we fact check the statements? As far as I understand, we have a free trade agreement that's still in effect.
And, it's false, and it's like the way of the President Trump making comments in the public, and I think that he again exaggerated the fact in order to make the situation or the negotiations just better for him for the future. The media reported that the average tariffs about the imported products from the United States for the Republic of Korea is less than 1%. And in terms of the free trade agreement between the two countries, South Korea and the U.S., there is no tariffs on most manufacturing products between the two countries. So it means that President Trump some exaggerated the facts about the tariffs and the trade between the two countries, but it clearly shows what kind of perceptions President Trump has got in terms of the trade with the South Korea. So it means that President Trump would be very aggressive in terms of reducing the trade deficits against the South Korea. So South Korea needed to be prepared for how to effectively cope with Trump's aggressiveness in terms of securing its economic interest against South Korea.
So briefly, could you also help us? What kind of strategy could South Korea take to help navigate with Trump's more assertive tariff and defense policies?
Well, basically the Trump government shows a little different features in terms of the making negotiations of the relations with other countries, including allies and non-allies. And unlike the Biden administration, where it put the more importance and the value in terms of value diplomacy, the principles, and on universal also as the value and principles, it cares about the pragmatic the approach or some kind of cost and the benefit approach and something like that. So we need to take advantage of the situation that we need to show the kind of the practical interests or the benefits to the United States, like the commercial ships or the Navy ships for MRO things that the Trump government really wants to South Korea. And he also mentioned some kind of energy cooperation project in Alaska with the South Korea and Japan. So he cares about the energy policy, and South Korea can make the huge investments and the contribution to those fields. And that would be a pretty good ground or region that President Trump cares about how South Korea, what kind of things South Korea wants in terms of making the profits and maintaining relations with the United States in terms of the trade. And so South Korea, unlike what it did with the Biden administration, the South Korean government need to focus on the pragmatic approach, where the two countries, both countries, can make the actual benefits and advantages and the profits and the money, and just like the give and take approach and the win-win strategy. So, and in terms of the actual and practical the approaches, the field, South Korea can make a room to make negotiations with the President Trump, and the President Trump and will use those kind of the economic benefits and advantages to the American voters and the publics.
Right.
And we need that kind of a little different approach with the different U.S. government.
Right, and we could also have ways of collaboration in expanding other areas as well. Now, we'll have to wrap up our discussion at this point. Thank you so much for your insights, Professor Min.
Thank you.
And, of course, Chris, we appreciate it so much.
Thank you.
And that'll be all from us on Within the Frame. Be sure to tune in next time as we continue to explore the stories that matter. Till then, stay informed and engaged.